Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, big tech fake news, the puppet masters, you can see they're having a very difficult time with Trump deporting all the illegals they brought into this country. And you can see why the fake news needs to continually fight against what Trump is doing. Because again, they are the mouthpiece of the deep state players, of the Ds. And without the illegals, they won't be able to win the election. They won't be able to install the people that they need. They won't be able to carry out their agenda. So this is why the fake news is continually pushing and pushing against the Trump administration and the deportation. And really think about it. All these individuals, they've come into this country illegally. And the Trump administration is deporting these people back to the country of origin, which means they are not a citizen of this country. They are a citizen of the country that they're going back to. And think about the rogue judges right now. They want to take a citizen out of the country that the individual was brought back to and bring them back to the U.S. So basically, they want the leaders of those countries, and most of these people that are deported are criminals, terrorists, you name it. They want those leaders there to take those people and import or export a terrorist into this country. And there was a discussion with CNN, Trump, and the president of El Salvador because he's visiting the United States. And they're trying to convince everyone that the individual that was sent to El Salvador, it was by accident. No, he broke the law. He has a deportation record going back a little bit in time. He's part of the MS-13 gang, and he's a citizen of El Salvador. He was sent back to his country. And the judge wants the authorities or Trump administration to go into El Salvador and kidnap this guy and bring him back to the United States. Or they want the president of El Salvador to export a terrorist into this country. I mean, really think about this for a second. You can imagine just going to any country saying, okay, the judge says we need to take you. And this person's a criminal. And the judge says we have to bring the criminal back to this country. We have to bring the terrorists to this country, even though they're a citizen of that country. This could create wars. I mean, really think about this for a second. And think about all the individuals that Trump is deporting. These are criminals. They've committed crimes in the past. Jenny Terra put this out and said, the Trump admin deported these illegal migrant criminal gang members to El Salvador over the weekend. Here are their names and rap sheets. Jose Santos Robles raped a 15-year-old girl in New York. Demarios Bello Sabiro. He's a Tren de Aragua associate identified as a known TDA gang member and was observed engaging in electronic communications related to alien smuggling operations and associated financial transactions. Rod Mel Orta, TDA member, previously attempted to file a refugee claim in Canada alongside 5 other Venezuelan nationals. The claims were subsequently denied. Luis Gomez, TDA member, who has multiple tattoos, assessed by both state and federal agencies as indicative of a gang affiliation. And according to state law enforcement reports, he has sustained a gunshot wound to the right calf while in Chile and has visible scarring on both cheekbones, consistent with injuries sustaining during prior prison altercations. Then we have Joender Riera, TDA member, and once again, committed crimes in this country. And the list goes on and on and on. Others who are arrested for assault with a deadly weapon, others for killing individuals, others for rape. These are the people that are being deported and sent back to their country of origin. And the fake news and these rogue judges are trying to convince everyone that the citizens of those countries, because they're not citizens of the United States, they should be kidnapped and brought back here, because really that's what they're saying, or they want the authorities in that country to export those people who are terrorists, gang members, rapists. They want them to be taken out of prison and sent back here. So basically, it tells you everything you need to know. The deep state players, they want the criminals back in this country because, again, the deep state players, they are criminals themselves. Stephen Miller responded to everything that's been going on. He says the following: Biden imported 15 million plus illegals in 4 years. Democrats believe each alien should get a lengthy federal trial before being sent back. After we scour the country to find them, because they're all evading arrest, a typical trial would take months to complete, not counting appeals. This would mean even if we shut down our entire federal court system, due to nothing else, the process that the Democrats demand would take multiple centuries to complete, which Democrats understand because they don't want any aliens removed. They want them all registered to vote. The judicial process is for Americans. Immediate deportation is for illegal aliens. If you break into someone's house, you don't get to spend months or years debating your presence. Trespassers must go, and they must go now. And then Stephen Miller explains what's been going on with this individual that was deported back to El Salvador, and this is Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Eric Doherty put this out and it says the following. Top Trump advisor Stephen Miller just went berserk for 3 minutes straight on Fox over the media narrative that Trump must bring home Kilmar Abrego Garcia from El Salvador. Miller perfectly debunked this entire claim that Garcia's deportation was an error. This entire thing is a masterclass. He said, we won the Supreme Court case clearly 9-0. A district court judge said unconscionably that the president and his administration have to go into El Salvador and extradite one of their citizens, an El Salvadorian citizen. That would be kidnapping. That we have to kidnap an El Salvadorian citizen against the will of his government and fly him back to America, which would be unimaginable act and invasion of El Salvador's sovereignty. So he appealed to the Supreme Court and it said, clearly, no district court can compel the president to exercise his Article 2 foreign powers. DOJ called me after the Supreme Court ruling, and they said, this is amazing. We won this case 9-0. We are in excellent standing here. So this has been portrayed wrong for 72 hours in the media. They said the most the court could ever compel you to do would be to facilitate return, which would basically mean if El Salvador voluntarily sends him back, we wouldn't block him at the airport. We would put him back in ICE detention, and then he would be deported either back to El Salvador or somewhere else. In 2019, he was ordered deported. And where is he from? El Salvador. Where is he a resident and citizen of? El Salvador. Is he here illegally? Yes. Does he have a deportation order? Yes. A DOJ lawyer who has since been relieved of duty, a saboteur, a Democrat, put into a filing incorrectly that this was a mistaken and removal. It was not. This was the right person sent to the right place. Now some have said, well, but he had a thing called withholding order. A withholding order means you've been ordered deported, but an immigration judge is saying you cannot go back to a particular country. Here's the thing. If you're a member of a foreign terrorist organization, you cannot have a withholding order. Since he's in MS-13, there is no withholding order. Furthermore, that gang he is accused of being persecuted by doesn't exist anymore in El Salvador. The 18th Street Gang is gone. So you have an illegal alien from El Salvador, and where are we supposed to send the illegal alien from El Salvador? To what country? El Salvador. So that to tell you everything you need to know. And the fake news is trying to spin this like they always do, trying to say, oh no, he wasn't supposed to be sent to the prison. Oh, it was a mistake. No, it wasn't. And once again, this individual is a criminal. He's a terrorist. And he's a citizen of El Salvador. He's not a citizen of the United States. So once again, you can see what the fake news is trying to do. And actually, if you look at the headline of CNN, it should tell you everything you need to know. So this is the headline. Man mistakenly deported to El Salvador won't be returned to the U.S. He's not a man that's mistakenly deported. It was done on purpose. He's an MS-13 gang member. And he entered the country illegally. And they're trying to convince you that he's a Maryland man. He's not. He's El Salvadorian. And he belongs in El Salvador. And the president of El Salvador says he's not going to return him back to the U.S. because he's a criminal. And again, what did the fake news do? They just went ahead and they spun the whole entire thing. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is we could see that 60 Minutes, they're up to their old tricks once again, where they're putting out fake information, and that's basically what they've been doing for a very long time. And Trump and the Patriots, they are now calling 60 Minutes and all the other fake news stations out on it. Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, I just finished watching 60 Minutes, the fake news show that was scandalously responsible for removing a terrible and incompetently delivered answer by failed presidential candidate Kamala Harris to an interview on 60 Minutes just prior to Election Day and putting it in its place a completely different answer to a completely different question in order to make Kamala look coherent. Now tonight, with two separate but highly inaccurate stories about Trump, they're at it again. The people at CBS, fake news, just don't get it. Then Trump put this out and said, almost every week, 60 Minutes, which is being sued for billions of dollars for the fraud they committed in the 2024 presidential election with their interview of failed presidential candidate Kamala Harris, mentions the name Trump in a derogatory and defamatory way, but this weekend's broadcast tops them all. They did not one but two major stories on Trump, one having to do with Ukraine, which I say is a war that would have never happened in the 2020 election and not been rigged. In other words, if I were president. And the other story was having to do with Greenland casting our country, as led by me, falsely, inaccurately, and fraudulently. I am so honored to be suing 60 Minutes, CBS Fake News, and Paramount over their fraudulent beyond recognition reporting. They did everything possible to illegally elect Kamala, including completely and corruptly changing major answers to an interview question. But it just didn't work for them. They're not a news show, but a dishonest political operative simply disguised as news and must be responsible for what they have done and are doing. They should lose their license, hopefully. The Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, as headed by its highly respected chairman, Brendan Carr, will impose the maximum fines and punishment, which is substantial for their unlawful illegal behavior. CBS is out of control at levels never seen before, and they should pay a big price for this. Make America great again. And then Rasmussen Reports responded to this and said the following. Today in FCC license and forfeitures, the idiots at CBS News, as a public trustee's licensee, may not intentionally distort the news. The FCC has stated that rigging or slanting the news is a most heinous act against the public interest. And that tells you everything you need to know. And if you really look at the fake news, this is what they do over and over and over again. They spin the news, they slant the news, they lie to the people, and they've been doing this for a very long time. Just like with that individual that was deported, they're calling him a Maryland man. He's not a citizen of this country. He came into this country illegally. He's a El Salvadorian man. That is what should have been the headline. And he is a gang member. And once again, during the entire press conference with the president of El Salvador, CNN, the fake news, they lost big time because we had Stephen Miller, we had Pam Bondi, we had Marco Rubio, we had the president of El Salvador. They were continually hitting CNN over and over and over. And when you started to really listen to the conversation, it really sounded ridiculous in what the reporters were asking. Hey, you know what? We know we deported murderers and rapists and stuff, but are you going to return them to the United States? I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. And now the people can see this as clear as day, what's really going on here. And it's getting worse and worse for the deep state players. I mean, just like if you look at other countries, you could see they're doing pretty much the same thing. Anyone that is trying to report the truth, anyone that is trying to show that the fake news is lying, the deep state players go after them. Disclosed TV put this out and said, Irish police will seek government action to address the growing issue of citizen journalism, preventing filming of police activities for safety. So they don't want anything filmed. They don't want people to report on certain things. You could see out in the UK, out in Australia, New Zealand, Germany, France, you name it, they're all pushing censorship, and they don't want people reporting on any of this because once again, you can see that they don't want the truth out there. And you can see they've already started the communication blackout. This is how it begins. And it's starting out in Europe, just like when we saw the pandemic and we saw the vaccine passport. Where did this originate? It originated out in Europe, out in Australia, out in New Zealand. Now you're starting to see this censorship move out in the same locations. And you can see that BitChute, because of the laws, they're not going to operate. You could see the EU is going after X. And this is going to continue as time goes on because you have to remember, the deep state players, they're losing their grip and they don't have control of the people. Trump and the Patriots, they have control of the people because now we have other social media platforms. And you can see those within the DC swamp, they're trying to maintain control. This is why these people don't want to leave their positions because they're part of the criminal syndicate. And if they leave their positions, they're no longer in control of the certain agencies, which means they lose control of their criminal syndicate. And Trump and team can actually drain the swamp then. This is why they're putting up such a big fight. Amuse put this out and said, federal agencies like the Social Security Administration are filled with Democrats who believe it is their duty to resist President Trump's agenda. Associate Commissioner Greg Parr opposed Trump's efforts to revoke Social Security numbers for illegals and was actively subverting the Doge team. Security was eventually required to forcibly remove him from the building after he was placed on administrative leave. And this is what Trump and team are dealing with right now. The criminal syndicate doesn't want to leave. Remember, they weren't elected into these positions. They could be fired from these positions because they work for the president of the United States, and the president works for we, the people. And I do believe that Trump sent us a message letting us know that what we're witnessing is the plan, because he put out a very interesting post on Truth, and it talks really about game theory. And it talks about you need game theory to remove the entrenched enemy. Think about what we're witnessing right now. And I do believe Trump just let us know this is exactly what is happening. We'll be talking about this in just a sec. But first, we could see that just a couple of days ago, Trump, he actually told Mexico that they have broken the treaty and they need to send water to Texas. And guess what Mexico is doing right now? They're sending water to Texas. So Mexico will facilitate an immediate delivery of water to farmers in Texas to help shore up resources amid Trump's tariff threats. And the Mexican president, Sheinbaum, said, yes, we're going to be sending the water and the farmers will be helped. And remember, this is from a 1944 treaty that stipulates that Mexico City send 1.75 million acre feet of water to the U.S. from the Rio Grande River every 5 years. In return, the U.S. sends 1.5 million acre feet of water every year to Mexico from the Colorado River. So right there, that tells you everything you need to know. And if you notice, peace through strength, Trump is calling all these nations on these treaties, and the nations now are doing what the treaties say, which means Trump has the upper hand. I mean, just take, for example, look at Panama Canal. We have Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. He went to Panama Canal. He secured the deal to get first and free passage for U.S. ships in the Panama Canal. And you have to remember, this is a critical waterway for the United States. It's a national security threat if we don't have the ability to send our ships through here. And as of right now, you could see Panama is doing everything that the U.S. wants right now. And Pete Hegseth said that this trip to Panama exceeded his expectations. So right there, it shows you that Trump, he was going to bring Panama back under the fold of the United States, and he has. And I do believe we're probably going to see Greenland and Canada in the end fall within the United States and our system. So most likely, I would probably say that Greenland will probably be under the U.S. protection, part of the U.S. And who knows, Canada could be the 51st state, because you have to remember, think about what's happening with the economy. Trump now is using the tariffs to put pressure on many of these nations, and Canada, they depend on us. And in the end, I think the people are going to see this. Sometimes you got to show the people the truth, and you got to actually have them experience this. And that's what people are experiencing right now. Now, the other thing that we could see is that the people around the world, they are now rallying around the people that are going to represent them. And you could see this in El Salvador. You could see this in Argentina. You can now see this in Ecuador, because Ecuador's center-right president has been reelected. Now, of course, the far-left opposition. Let's talk about protecting our health. Could your health issues be caused by an invisible enemy, fatigue, bloating, brain fog? What if parasites are the real culprit? I was digging into parasite cleanses when I came across this video from the trusted doctor.
What are the main differences between ivermectin and fenbendazole? These are two anti-pathogens used to treat parasitic infections and other similar types of conditions. They are used quite often in the oncology world to treat cancer. They both have as anti-pathogenic abilities.
Interesting, right? Did you know 50% of Americans have parasites? They are everywhere in our food, water, and pets. They secretly invade your body, wreaking havoc on your gut, energy levels, and even your brain and the mainstream medical system. They don't want you to think about this because one great cleanse can change your life. The Wellness Company has a solution for you, ivermectin plus mebendazole. Both FDA approved to treat parasites, now combined in a parasite cleanse combo that wipes out many of these invaders. Just fill out a brief medical intake form to get your 3-month supply. Lots of parasite cleanses are all over social media, but not the gold standard level. Maha is officially here, and the Wellness Company is making these hard-to-get medications digitally accessible so you can live your best life. Head to twc.health/X22 and use code X22 to save $60 off plus free shipping. Don't wait. Cleanse your body and take back control today. Is not conceding to the election. And once again, you could see the people now, they're starting to understand, they're starting to realize that all these far left individuals, they are controlled individuals, and the people, they want someone that's going to represent them and make their country great. And I do believe by Trump getting elected, putting all his policies into place, the world is starting to see this, and the people of the world are starting to see this, and they're starting to react. And it's going to get worse and worse for the deep state players as we move forward. Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, congratulations to Daniel Noboa, who will be a great leader for the wonderful people of Ecuador. He will not let you down. Letting you know that these people are being put into place, and these people are going to make each and every one of these countries great again, instead of having the deep state players tear down the countries and destroy the countries and actually remove the privileges for the people. Because you have to remember, the Constitution in many of the other countries, it's not the same as here in the United States. They don't have the rights. Most of these countries have privileges. And this is why people look up to the United States, because the United States has a constitution like no other. We, the people, are born with our rights. So I think that we're starting to see that this push for patriotism in every single country is going to spread across the world. And Trump right now, he is now planning to end the wars and usher in peace. And you can see the deep state players, they're fighting back with everything that they have. Iran, with the deep state players in Iran, with the Houthis, they're fighting back. You can see Zelensky. I do believe Zelensky is trying to set up Trump and trap him in something. We'll be talking about that in just a sec. But Trump, he put out a message on Truth, and he's letting everyone know that we're doing the same thing that we did to ISIS, that we're doing to the Houthis now. We are removing their leaders, and soon they won't be able to fight back. This is what Trump put out on Truth. Time for the terrorists to hide, but it won't do them any good. Our war fighters, the greatest the world has ever seen, we will find them and bring them to swift justice. I just got rid of Joe Biden's dangerous red tape and empowered our war fighters once again, just like I did against our fight with ISIS, who were completely obliterated in 3 weeks under General Daniel Kane, our new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We will support the Somali people who should not allow the Houthis to embed, which they're trying to do, to end terrorism and bring prosperity to the country. So right there, he shows a video and he shows a hit on one of the individuals who are the Houthi leaders and basically wipe them out, just like he did with the ISIS terrorists in Syria. Because you have to remember, going back in time, what did Obama do? He took the control away from the military, and he was telling the military where to bomb. And you know what happened? ISIS grew and grew and grew. And when Trump came into office, he said, oh, no, I'm giving this power back to the military. And all of a sudden, ISIS was destroyed. And you could see that the deep state players, I do believe they're trying to lure Trump into Ukraine, and they're most likely going to try to remove Trump if he steps foot in Ukraine. Clandestine put this out and said, Zelensky is once again insisting Trump visit Ukraine before advancing peace negotiations. How about no? Ukraine is a CIA proxy, and we just learned Ralph was trying to buy a missile launcher from Ukraine to take out Trump. This sounds like an obvious trap, and it definitely is an obvious trap. And you can see that Zelensky, the deep state players, they're becoming very, very desperate. What do you think would happen if Trump went to Ukraine? You think they would try to do something? I would say so, yes. And why does Zelensky need Trump in Ukraine? Yes, over the weekend, Russia hit a town. Trump came out and said it was a mistake. So why would Zelensky want Trump to enter Ukraine? Because they would have then control and they would be able to use missiles or blame it on Russia, saying that they killed Trump. Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, the war between Russia and Ukraine is Biden's war, not mine. I just got here. And for 4 years during my term, I had no problem in preventing it from happening. President Putin and everyone else respected our president. I had nothing to do with this war, but I am working diligently to get the death and destruction to stop. If the 2020 presidential election was not rigged, and it was, in so many ways, that horrible war would have never happened. President Zelensky and crooked Joe Biden did an absolutely horrible job in allowing this travesty to begin. There were so many ways of preventing it from ever starting, but that is in the past. Now we have to get it stopped, and fast. So sad. And he's absolutely right, but you can see the deep state players, they're not going to give up, and I do believe they're going to try to keep this war going as long as they possibly can. But I do believe Trump has certain things that he's going to use against Zelensky, but I think he's waiting for the right time, the right moment to use them, because you have to remember, Trump said, listen, if Zelensky doesn't come to the negotiating table, it's not going to be good for Zelensky. So I won't be surprised if Trump is getting prepared and ready to put a little bit of pressure on Zelensky. And I think this is why they're probably getting nervous, and this is why Zelensky wants Trump to come to Ukraine, because this way they have a lot more control in trying to remove Trump. And what I mean by remove is kill him, assassinate him. And I don't think Trump is going to fall into this. It'd be very interesting if maybe Trump and Putin together visit Zelensky, because Trump then would have a little bit of a protection, because what are they going to say? Oh, wait, they tried to kill Trump and Putin at the same exact time? Who? Who tried to kill them? It wouldn't make sense, would it? But let's see how this all plays out. This is going to be very, very interesting. But you can see that the Trump and the Patriots, they're still culling the armed forces. We have Fort McCoy's Colonel Sheila Bez Ramirez. She has refused to display the Secretary of Defense and POTUS photographs. And I do believe that most likely she'll probably be removed from command very, very soon. She's leaving them completely and utterly blank, which is absolutely ridiculous, which means she will not follow the command structure. And you have to remember, Trump, he's the commander-in-chief, and Hegseth is the Secretary of Defense. So if something should happen, can we count on this person? Can we count on the chain of command? It doesn't seem that way. So this individual most likely should be removed. Just like all those individuals that were involved in COVID, they should also all be removed and they should be sent to prison. And what we've come to find out is that former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's handling of the COVID crisis wasn't just a health catastrophe, but a financial one too. Remember, he pushed all the sick people, doesn't matter if they have flu, pneumonia, he pushed them all into the nursing homes because they needed to get the death rate up. And you know what's very interesting about all of this is that there was an audit report that was just released on Friday. And the state government poured $453 million into building an enormous stockpile of medical equipment. And remember, this was a pandemic. Remember, they kept reminding us to have the ticker numbers of the deaths and how many people were sick from the fake tests. And they said it's a pandemic. So Trump sent hospital ships. He set up makeshift hospitals. We had New York spend $453 million in building an enormous stockpile of medical equipment. And you know what the audit found? They only used 0.0000012% of it. Why? Think about that for a second. That should tell you everything you need to know. And this included ventilators, x-ray machines, and it's just sitting in a warehouse. And now they're paying to keep all of this equipment, and the equipment has to be inspected. You have to make sure that you could use the equipment, and no one's even doing that. Most of it is 90% past due for inspection. So all of this is then worthless. But again, They said we're in this deadly, deadly pandemic, and they never used the makeshift hospitals. They never used the ships. They never used all the equipment. So the question is why? I think we all know the answer to that, because the whole thing was one gigantic hoax, just like everything else the deep state does. Now, the other thing that's really interesting is that the records from a top official at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention are missing. So, Department of Health and Human Services officials told Senator Ron Johnson in March that they're having a difficult time locating certain records. Why would that be? So, who is this individual? Dr. Tom Shimabukuro's records, they remain lost, potentially removed from HHS's email system altogether. Dr. Tom Shimabukuro is the director of the CDC's Immunization Safety Office, which researches the safety of vaccine, and his records are missing. He may have violated laws such as the Federal Records Act. So Johnson has asked Bondi Patel and Hodgkins to investigate whether Shimabukuro and other officials within the HHS deleted or destroyed agency records. Why would they get rid of them? Because again, they're covering up the effects of the vaccine. They didn't want people to know. And if you actually saw the emails, it would come out that they knew that this vaccine that they pushed on everyone didn't work. And it made people very, very sick. And it killed people. And I do believe, even though they deleted it, it doesn't mean it's deleted. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is that there's a criminal referral request, and it's been formally filed in 7 U.S. states, Arizona, Pennsylvania being the latest, accusing Fauci and other individuals of murder, medical coercion, and even terrorism stemming from the COVID era policies and decisions. Arizona and Pennsylvania have joined Florida, Texas, Louisiana, Missouri, and Oklahoma. The Vyers Law Group and the former Fed Group Freedom Foundation submitted the explosive referrals this week, urging state attorneys general to pursue criminal investigations into Fauci and his pandemic-era cohorts. The filings represent a growing grassroots and legal effort to hold COVID-19 tyrants accountable for the damage they wrought by deadly hospital protocols. So once again, yes, Fauci might have been pardoned by the auto pen for federal crimes, but for state crimes, we can still get them. I do believe in the end, it's going to be proven that Biden had no clue who he was pardoning, and all of a sudden you're going to see that these people, they don't have protection anymore. And these are the individuals the states are going after. Fauci, Birx, Walensky, Collins, Dr. Cliff Lane, Dr. Stephen Hahn, Dr. Janet Woodcock, Dr. Peter Hotez, Dr. Redfield, Dr. Dashik, Dr. Barrick, Dr. Bright, hospital administrators and care providers. And the referral letters outline the following: murder, negligent homicide, involuntary manslaughter, medical coercion and abuse, kidnapping, human trafficking and forced labor, racketeering, operating a corrupt organization, terrorism. Absolutely unbelievable. And at this point in time, they were responsible for this pandemic. They lied to the people. And when they got caught in a lie, they lied again. And they killed a lot of people. And once all said and done, this is going to be worse than Nuremberg. And I think people are going to learn the truth from all this when all this information comes out. Now, the other thing that we could see is that the deep state players, they are going after Trump, going after Elon, and it looks like all of this is Norm Eison's Democrat playbook. Insurrection Barbie put this out and said, just a reminder, the architect of these protests is Norm Eison, and he told us this was the playbook in 2019. In Norm Eison's Democratic Playbook, specifically the Democratic Playbook Preventing and Reversing Democratic Backsliding, originally published by the Brookings Institute in 2019 and updated in a later version, civil protest is framed as a legitimate and essential component of democratic resilience, particularly in the face of authoritarian tendencies. Key themes from the playbook regarding civil protest: nonviolent protests as a democratic tool. Eison emphasizes peaceful mass mobilization as a key mechanism for resisting authoritarian encroachments. He draws an example from Eastern Europe, the U.S., and Latin America to show how the civil Protests can defend democratic norms. Strategic protests to pressure institutions. Coordination with civil society and media. Framing and messaging. Eisen stresses that successful protests need a clear moral message, emphasizing defense of democracy, protection of rights, pre-bunking and countering authoritarian narratives. And the playbook suggests that activists prepare preemptive narratives to counter expected government backlash, labeling protests as unpatriotic or insurrectionist. Encourages pre-bunking through media campaigns and grassroots education. So basically, he is creating an insurgency. And that's what we're seeing right now. And this is why Trump has created the counterinsurgency. And yes, Trump is following a plan. I do believe he sent us a message about the plan and how game theory will be able to remove the deep state players. And Insurrection Barbie follows this up and says, since its inception, George Soros Open Society Foundation has given Democrat NGOs and candidates $32 billion. Talk about oligarchy. So Soros is funding everything, and Norm Eisen, he is pushing the playbook. And basically, they're creating the insurgency, the insurrection in this country. And they're going to continually push this. And what's going to happen is the insurgency is going to become violent, which we're already starting to see. But I do believe it's going to move to the next level. And the rogue judges are going to continually try to control the executive branch. We're going to have these people that are protesting. They're going to turn into riots because when all's said and done and the peaceful protests don't work, this is when they change everything up. And what's very interesting, and think about what Norm Eisen has done, think about what George Soros has done, think about what you've seen in the past with BLM and what's going on with Elon and how they're burning the Teslas and people are attacking Teslas. Think about all that and think about an insurgency and insurrection, because these blue anons, they're now in full panic mode over absurd conspiracy that Trump will declare martial law on April 20th, which means most likely they're preparing to do something to force Trump's hand. He's not just going to say, hey, there's martial law. Something would actually have to happen. Now, of course, what they're saying is, look, Trump is bringing the military down to the border. He set up the Roosevelt Reservation area, and you could see that he's getting prepared to go after everyone and arrest everyone. Well, we know that's not what he's doing. We know that in order for Trump to do anything, there would have to be some type of an insurgency, which means the deep state players, they are most likely preparing to do something, and they're pushing this narrative. And they're saying that it's going to happen on April 20th. Now, we know that April 20th is President Trump's birthday, which is very, very interesting. But the other thing that's really interesting is April 20th is also the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. And it just happens to fall on his birthday. So they're trying to put all this together, and they're trying to convince everyone this is when he's going to do it. But again, I do believe what they're doing is they're projecting out there, letting everyone know that this, in the end, this is the direction that they will head in. Because once again, if they can't stop Trump, they will go full out physical riots, and the insurgency will be moved to the next step. And I do believe this is what they're planning to do, because think about it. As we move down the line here and more information is brought out into the open and people start to realize who the true enemy is, this is when they react. But think about what Trump has been doing. He's been cutting off their funding. He's been cutting off their security clearance. He's been removing the ability for the deep state players to do something that is harmful to we the people. Trump has come out with a statement saying that we have very, very powerful weapons that nobody knows about. And he's sending this message to all the deep state players around the globe, letting them know if you try to do something, it's not going to end well for you. So I do believe every step of the way, before we go after the deep state players and everything is produced, he's making sure that the people of this country are safe. And this is why I do believe Trump has brought out the JFK files. I think this is why Tulsi Gabbard said, listen, we found a lot more documentations that were hidden in the National Archives. They're sending messages out there, letting everyone know that the deep state players have been trying to hide this and keep this under wraps so no one can see it. And when you start to look at the Crossfire Hurricane documents, you start to realize that this was one gigantic coordinated effort. I think we all know this, but think about all the people that have no idea what Crossfire Hurricane is. Paul Sperry put this out and said, declassified files reveal the FBI knew a Washington Post Russiagate story that won a Pulitzer Prize was false. Documents refuting the Washington Post story provides Trump fresh evidence for his ongoing defamation lawsuit versus the Pulitzer Board. One of the Washington Post reporters who authored the bogus Pulitzer-winning story was none other than Ellen Nakashima, a renowned stenographer for the D.C. intelligence community during the Russiagate hoax. So the Russiagate hoax is completely falling apart, and Cash now has suspended and removed from the headquarters, CI, the FBI analyst Brian Auten, who rubber-stamped the fake dossier to frame and spy on Trump advisor as a Russian agent, and who later discounted Hunter Biden's laptop evidence as Russian disinformation. So once again, Cash, he is now suspending those individuals. Trump is removing their security clearance. They're shutting off the funding. And I do believe every step of the way, what they're doing is they're setting it up to make sure that they don't have ammunition to go after we the people when this information comes out. Because remember, do they want everyone to learn everything about Crossfire Hurricane? Learn everything about Crossfire Typhoon, Crosswinds? Remember, these are all the different operations, and they called them after storms, which is very, very interesting because I do believe Trump is going to redirect the storm, and the storm is going to be heading towards the deep state players. And I do believe all this is going to lead back to the overthrow of the United States government, and that happened in 2020. And I think the story that Trump is building, well, a lot of people are going to learn quite a bit on how they cheated, and they're already learning. Because of Elon and team, because of what has come out with the Social Security numbers, what's been coming out about the mail-in ballots, what's been coming out about the machines, people now can see how they're able to cheat in the elections. And when people start to realize that, oh, they use all this and they connect it to the illegals that they're bringing in, the picture becomes very, very clear on how they do this. And when you look at Arizona, the picture is becoming very, very clear because you have to remember, going back to 2022, Kari Lake lost, Mark Fincham lost, Abe Hamadeh lost, and we know there was a huge amount of cheating. You go back to 2020, same exact thing. The Persistent put this out and said, all 15 Arizona counties have begun the process of verifying and removing non-citizens from their voter rolls, which could be as many as 50,000. This is huge, monstrous, earth-shaking news. DC Draino responded to this and said, kind of crazy that Arizona Democrats needed a lawsuit to force them to remove 50,000 non-citizens from voter rolls. But this is who we're up against. Democrats will cheat any way they can, whether it's with illegal aliens voting or shutting down half the election machines on Election Day in Republican areas of Maricopa County. Corrupt. And think about it. They're just removing it now, and it took a lawsuit to do this. But Pam Kirby says, remember 2020 when Trump lost by 10,457 votes? Remember 2020 when Kari Lake lost to Hobbs by 17,000 votes? Remember 2022 when Representative Abe Hamadeh lost to Mays by 280 votes? You think it was the 50,000 votes that they're removing now? If it was removed back then, would they have lost? I don't think so. The elections were rigged, and now people can see this as clear as day. But we could see how Trump and team, how they're preparing to usher in voter ID. Now, that is very interesting because what are they pushing everyone to do? They're pushing everyone to get real ID versus the driver's license. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, well, I don't want to get a real ID because it's the federal government and they're going to have a real ID. So to ask a simple question, if everyone wants voter ID, what is voter ID then? Because remember, it's for federal elections. Would that be a federal ID? So what happens if they're using real ID to get or maybe used as voter ID? Brian Cates put this out and says, We're moving as a country to having to show a verified U.S. citizen ID card to vote in our federal elections. More than a few of the big social media influencers' accounts are taking money to strongly oppose Real ID. This was already exposed during the recent soda psyop. Some of these people you're following on here are taking money to drive certain narratives. You already know this. Some people behind the scenes with deep pockets are desperate to stop a national ID card that is used to vote in our elections. Think about how much time, money, resources, and efforts were expanded to bring these millions of illegals in here. Give them driver license, social security numbers, register them to vote, etc. Trump has found a way to render all their efforts in vain. By 2026, if you show up to vote in an election and you can't display a real ID, you can't vote. The people who invested in the mass migration can see this coming. So that is very, very interesting. And Clandestine says, well, Noam confirms that Real ID will help the state secure elections. It looks like Trump is trying to use existing laws on the books to secure elections, similar to how he created DOGE by repurposing an agency that already existed. This is about election integrity. Noam also confirms that at the federal level, that information is not going to be, there's not going to be any biometric information. So these narratives that this is some sort of digital ID or a social credit score are overblown. This is about identifying who's here legally so we can make life difficult for those who are here illegally and prevent them from voting in our election. As I proposed the other day, Real ID appears to be the gateway to securing elections, or at least the start. If we combine more secure ID with paper ballots and same-day voting, the Dems will no longer be able to use their favorite election fraud methods, i.e. illegals voting and ballot harvesting. They'll never win a federal election. And the beauty of this whole plan is that Trump does not have to go through Congress because the laws are already on the books. The Biden regime just refused to enforce it and push back the deadline from 2023 to 2025. Trump might be on to something here. And I do believe he is. Because think about it. Why not use everything the deep state players put into place? They were going to use it for other means. But now Trump said, you know something? Forget about the biometrics. Forget about this. Let's just use this ID to show who's a citizen and who's not a citizen. And he's going to actually destroy the deep state, the D's, with this. Now, they can fight against him. But just like everything else, he's going to say, you created this. This is your stuff. Just like Obama created DOGE. I'm just using what was here. And this is going to screw the deep state players and the D's. They see it coming. They know it's coming. And they won't be able to stop this. Why do you think they're paying certain influencers to push a certain narrative? And Trump, he let everyone know that this has been the plan from the very, very beginning. And this is what he put out on Truth. The best definition of intelligence is the ability to predict the future. So the statement suggests that intelligence is best defined as the capacity to anticipate future outcomes based on current information, patterns, and reasoning. It implies that a key hallmark of intelligence is not just processing data or solving problems in the present, but using that understanding to forecast what might happen next. For example, a chess player who can predict their opponent's move, or a scientist who can foresee the results of an experiment demonstrates intelligence through this predictive ability. Now think about this for a second. We've heard this before. We heard it via the Q posts. What is he talking about? He's talking about game theory. The idea that intelligence is the ability to predict the future aligns closely with the concepts in game theory. Game theory involves analyzing strategic interactions where players make decisions based on predicting others' actions and outcomes. Intelligence as prediction mirrors this. It's about anticipating future states like opponents' move in chess or market trends, using available information and reasoning. In game theory, players use models like payoff matrices or decision trees to forecast results, which requires understanding patterns, probabilities, and other incentives. Defining intelligence as prediction emphasizes forecasting based on data and logic. Game theory is more structured, focusing on defined rules and players, while the broader definition of intelligence could apply to less formal scenarios, like predicting weather or social dynamics, and includes non-strategic aspects like creativity or emotional insight. So I do believe Trump sent us a message letting us know that he is using game theory to destroy the deep state players. This is why he's not going directly at them. And he's predicting their moves. Let's go back to a couple of posts here. Post 4024, April 30th, 2020. Sometimes you can't tell the public the truth. You must show them. A deeply entrenched enemy who controls the vast majority of communications is only defeated by what? Game theory. Then we have post 60, November 2nd, 2017. You can count the people who have the full picture on two hands. Of those, less than 10 people. Only 3 are non-military. Why is this relevant? Game theory. Outside of a potential operator who has been dialed in with orders specific to his/her mission, nobody else has this information. Operators never divulge. Alice in Wonderland. So they've been using game theory this entire time. And when people go, how did they know that this was coming up? Because Trump just told you how they know. They're pushing the deep state players in the direction they want. Remember, this is an entrenched enemy. They controlled all communications. And with game theory, what did Trump do? He removed the control of communications and brought the control of communications back to we the people. That's why we say we are the news now. And Trump is using game theory to remove the entrenched enemy within D.C. and many other areas. And I do believe he just let us know that he's following the plan, and the plan is on schedule. And this is what they've been using from the very, very beginning. And many people don't know about this, and now he just let the people of this country know about it. I guess it's the right time, the right place to do this. Because does he have full control? Absolutely. Why? Because the Patriots are in control. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.